Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unity's official live stream. We're here for another creator spotlight with the Made with Unity game, The Tribe Must Survive. It's an unforgiving strategy survival tribe builder. This game has so much going for it. It's a roguelike, it's Lovecraftian, and it's got city builder elements. There's so much going on here we're going to dive into. If it's your first time watching a creator spotlight and you don't know what you're in for, this is a show where we actually look inside the game editor and get the behind the scenes look at how games are actually made. So all the incredible tooling, ingenuity, and craft will be shared graciously by our guests for all of the game devs watching. This particular show is super exciting since it's one of the first studios that I've had on who have actually used UI Toolkit in full production. So that's going to be a fascinating deep dive. We'll also get to see what that experience really was like for them. They also blended 2D art and animations and 3D lighting, so we'll get to see all the trickery that went into pulling that off. We'll then also get real nerdy and look at the performance optimization, unit testing, and the use of scriptable objects for no-code event systems, which is turns out to be a great utility for enabling game designers on your team who don't want to be like messing in code all day. But before we dive into all of that, let's look at the trailer for Tribe Must Survive. The Tribe Must Survive. Hey guys, awesome trailer. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So here with Simon and Georg, not to be confused with Simon and George. We made that very clear, right? Just before going live for everybody watching. How's everyone? How are you guys doing?
Yeah, we're good.
Amazing.
Really looking forward to this stream.
Same here, honestly. Gave a little tease right at the start, but really excited to dive into all that UI Toolkit stuff and all the other cool stuff you're showing today. But before that, let's do a quick round of intros. Georg, if you want to go first.
Yeah. So my name is Georg. I'm the technical director here at Walking Tree Games, so and also one of the co-founders. Initially I did all of the coding of the game and until we grew a bit, and so now I'm still working deep on the game and having fun with tech.
Amazing. Pleasure to have you. And Simon.
Yeah, so I'm Simon. I'm the game director here at Walking Tree Games, and I'm also one of the co-founders, and I do the things that game directors do, I oversee the game design and mostly the production stuff.
Okay, it's a pleasure to have both of you here. So there's two of you in the studio. How big is the studio overall?
So now we're 6 people here, and we have a couple of freelance friends that help on and off.
Amazing. And did it start off as just the two of you, or was it a bigger group?
Yeah, it was just the 2 of us in the beginning. Yeah,
exactly. Just the 2 of you, huh? So what's the story? How did you two meet?
Yeah, we knew each other since 2014. So we met in a previous job. It was also in the games industry, and even though we never directly worked with each other, we kind of in one team we touched, on our areas on many different projects. So we always got along pretty well, and this idea of starting a company together was floating around for a really long time already. And then in 2020 we actually started getting serious and really started to plan it a little more. And then in 2021 officially founded Walking Tree Games. And now we are a team of 6, and still moving forward.
Okay, that's fascinating. So you were kind of like flirting with the idea for a while there. Were you prototyping stuff together while you were like thinking about it, or was it just talking about the game idea? How did that work?
We were actually we went on an offsite actually to brainstorm what we would do together.
Oh, nice.
And I mean, we kind of knew that we wanted to start a business together, and then we had couple of ideas, also couple of game ideas, and then we actually started with The Tribe Must Survive. Back then it was called Project Hive. That was our first idea, and we started with that and went through with it basically.
Oh wow! First idea, best idea. It was like the first one, and you just went for that right away, huh? Is it something that you had in your mind for a while, or like is this like a genre that you're really into, or were you working on a similar genre while you were at the company, or is it just something you're both fans of?
No, it's quite the opposite. It's pretty much on the other end of the spectrum. So we wanted to do something that's really challenging to us and something that's new to us. So it's our first game that we published on Steam for the PC. So before, everything was mobile or browser stuff mostly. And then the other thing was that we wanted to do a proper simulation where a lot of the stuff happens automatically. So we kind of knew that really early. We were brainstorming a bunch of other ideas as well, but came to the conclusion that we should do something that we would really love to play ourselves. So we kind of stuck with these genres of simulation games and the more roguelike games that we were playing at the time. Created a vision around that.
Amazing. So you prototyped that. After then you jumped straight to you were 6 people. What happened that period of time from the prototype, the offsite you called it, which is very corporate by the way. I can tell you were working at a very corporate company. So you're like, we went on an offsite. It wasn't just like we had a game jam where we were 2 dudes hanging out. So you like worked on something, and then that evolved to a demo or a vertical slice, and how did you get all those other people on board?
Yeah, so I mean, that was a long phase, right? We started this in 2020, and in the beginning it was just us 2, and we started building demos, and we always knew that we wanted to have something playable very early. Go for that iterative approach of getting people's feedback and having some functioning piece of software or game in this case that we can build on. That also sounds corporate, right? And then therefore we very early started having a Discord, and we shared our demo in the beginning just with friends and family, then later with more people that were interested, and we kept getting positive feedback. So at some point in 22 we made the decision that we should start pitching to publishers, because we felt like the game has the chance to do well and deserves to get a little more of everything, a little more time, a little more budget, a little more support. And that's how we found Starbreeze, who are our publisher now. And we also got some additional funding from the German state, and that allowed us to hire a couple of people, or 4 people in this case. And that's where we're at the moment.
Okay, fantastic. So what does that team look like? I think people are very curious to know, like, when you have limited resources and you're only going to have a team of 6, where do you allocate? Of course, it depends on the game you're working on, but for this particular game, people have seen the trailer now. Like, where did you decide to, and how did you make those decisions? Like, okay, we need an artist. Okay, we need a sound designer. How did that work out?
I mean, what we had in the beginning was the 2 of us, right? So Georg really heavily focused on the technical side of things, and me very focused on the game design and business side of things. What we knew we needed was somebody who will do a lot of the actual content creation, the actual writing of events. So we got a content designer for that, content designer and writer, Nico, who's working with us for pretty much a little bit more than a year now.
Yeah.
And then we also at some point decided that it would be good to have somebody additional for the systems design, just because, with simulation games like this, playtesting and balancing everything is a huge time sink and, very brainy work. You need to go really deep into it. You need to have your tables. You need to try everything out, but also listen to the user feedback. So it's really a full-time job, and it kept, becoming difficult for me to keep juggling that. So we got a system designer as well. And then the artist that we had been working with for quite a while, Norbert, so he worked with us in a freelance capacity before. He also joined the team full-time. So he's the person who makes all the beautiful event art and is responsible for most of the UIs.
Okay.
And then we got an additional Unity developer, actually, that had some good experience already with, the various Unity tools, and that helped us to, get the game visually also to a different level.
Great. And I noticed there was also some really interesting audio there. Did you bring people on for that as well? While playing the game, it's like the audio is very well done.
There was actually a good friend of ours who works as a freelancer, and
Nice.
he already did audio for mobile games we worked on, and we're really happy with the results back then. And then we asked him if he wants to work on the project, and he's a very busy man actually, but he liked our game, and we somehow convinced him to work on the project. And he's also a developer, so it's like really crazy how he works. So he gets access to the project and he does his stuff, and then once he leaves, you just have sound in your game. And
so he does the integration and implementation, everything.
I mean,
that's convenient.
I did some of the integration,
awesome.
but he really knows how to do a lot of stuff. So it's awesome. It's Jan. So
Okay, shout out.
One of our other.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, one of our other colleagues once described it that way in a previous company, that it's magic to work with him, because you leave the office in the evening and there's no sound, and you come in the next morning, you have sound in the game. Everything has sound, and the game just feels totally different. Yeah, that's exactly our experience with him as well. It's magic. It really elevates the game to another level.
That's incredible. So he's been doing sound. He wasn't just like a composer, sound effects person. He was doing it particularly for games. So he was a friend who was in games.
Yeah.
Okay.
He made his own games before. He's like extremely creative guy that does. It feels like a million things at the same time all the time, and happened to take the time to help us with the sound as well.
Awesome, good find. Whenever the lights go out and then you hear all the creatures in the woods, I'm just like, no! I just blow the horn, turn on the firewood, just freak out. So let's jump into that. People who don't know what the game is probably have no idea what I just said. So maybe you can give like a quick synopsis of what the game is. I'm sure you'll do a better job than my intro, and then we'll talk about like what inspired it. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So the game at its core, genre-wise, it's a 4X survivor game. So you're playing as a small tribe that tries to survive in a pretty hostile world. The world is what we call a cosmic horror Stone Age, so inspired by the Lovecraftian stories. And one of the main aspects of this game that makes it survival is that basically survival is a race between progress and disasters that hit you in the over the 5 decks of the game. So you need to assemble, the tools and the resources to actually survive all these disasters. And it has some roguelike elements to it as well, some RNG aspects and so on that, make every run a little bit different. And even if you beat the game, I think there's reasons to play it again.
Right. Yeah, and you can see that like when you're playing it, there are these random events that happen, there are choices you have to make, and this blend of Stone Age and Lovecraft I have never seen before, which I think it's very cool and interesting. It really comes through. It really comes through in the writing, and the sound design and just everything. Really, it's super well done.
Thank you.
No, definitely. And but actually, I'm curious. So you mentioned Lovecraft and all that, but there's more inspirations. that went into the game as well, and we have some footage that we're gonna play, and maybe you can walk us through some of that.
Yeah. I mean, here that's Stephen King's The Mist, so the movie. Yeah, definitely one of the big inspirations because it's like the most striking, to me at least, scenario where you got a bunch of people in an extreme situation and there's all these monsters out there, but pretty quickly in the movie, you know, the people become more scary than the actual monsters out there, which is something that's just super interesting, and we wanted to explore that in our game as well. Yeah, and here, Color Out of Space, shout out to Nicolas Cage, of course.
Shout out to Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, because I really, I just
even when he's not involved, you know.
yeah, he's absolutely not involved there, but still, because you know the neon lights in horror was something that was kind of new to us, and we really liked that contrast of, you know, the scary things actually sometimes being, you know, bright purple or shiny or whatever, not necessarily dark and creepy.
That's interesting.
Or, well, still creepy, but not dark. And yeah, and then The Shining, of course, is like the typical movie that keeps you in the dark. That is like, I actually didn't realize it the first couple times I watched it, but it's like clearly cosmic horror, of course, because you don't know what is going on. There's so much unknowable stuff in this movie. Even until the end, you're not quite sure. Was he just insane? Was he just psychotic, or did he actually have some sort of superpower, and was this actually a demon? And it's like, it totally keeps you in the dark. It never explains itself, and that's why it's so creepy.
It's very subtle
with people,
which makes it so creepy. It's true. Yeah
exactly. So big inspirations for us as well. And of course, The Thing, another example.
Classic.
You know, just people locked in a pretty horrible situation with each other, not sure who's the monster. But yeah, game wise, now we're at games. We're definitely inspired by, you know, the big strategy games out there, the big simulation games. Europa Universalis for its you know, Anthill vibe, the magic, these more roguelike games like Slay the Spire and Faster Than Light that you know, really hooked us at the time. And old school RPG players might notice the German Gothic games. It's a German RPG series that
I've never seen that one.
Yeah, it really stuck with us, or with me, I should say. I guess I don't know if you played it actually, Jörg, but because it's absolutely not holding your hand. You know, you're just getting thrown into the deep end. The world and the NPCs in it, they really don't care about you. So you really get to struggle to make it through, and that feels extremely rewarding, and also gives it a sense of, you know, realism. So it's
a lot of these
really cool.
These examples are like, there's like this ruthlessness or this world that doesn't care about you. You just have to survive in it, and it's like, it's not forgiving in a way, which is what I felt. The game is tough. It's like a tough environment. You're in a harsh environment, and you really have to like make your way through.
Yeah, definitely. So to me, you know, I mean, we're all a little bit older, right? And when I remember playing Mario 1 on the Game Boy, the game was really hard. You know, and you had to go through
There's
the
no
the
save
trial and error
points.
no tutorials, no nothing. You know, you just swim or sink kind of style, and that I think to some extent that's what, you know, makes these games so memorable and makes it so rewarding once you actually manage to get to the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, here's Faster Than Light, as I mentioned already. Yeah. So as in these games, the roguelike games, for us, it's the idea behind the Tribe Must Survive is also that you can forge your own strategies. You can find these bits and pieces that allow you to come up with your own unique play style that allows you to get through the game. And there's games like Frostpunk and of course old school Stronghold that you know, are just brilliant city builder games, basically, that are definitely an inspiration as well.
Great. And building off all of that, the game, of course, you mentioned like starting with a prototype and then moving on to like fleshing the game out to a vertical slice. I think you have some of that footage as well to show, so maybe you can tell us about this start. Looks very different, I mean, but you can see there's something there, you know. Resemblance.
Yeah, back then the game was still in 2D, and we were basically starting to put together this the basic mechanics of the game, and slowly added in the visuals and build out more systems as we learned more about the game, and what worked and what could be better, so ultimately it led to something that looks roughly like this. Yep.
It's so cool to see the process just so quickly side by side. Starting from the first one, I noticed like maybe the scale feels a bit different, right? So it feels like maybe the environment feels a bit bigger or something like that. Maybe it's because you're deeper into the game at that point, but it feels like there's a lot more people on screen, and then you can see it like just kind of closing in on what it ended up being.
Yeah, I think this first video was from a technical test that we actually did there, where we wanted to see. So in our game, each of these little tribe members, they have their own AI mind. Basically, they are totally controlling themselves. They have a need system. They have behaviors that they choose themselves, and so this was one of the first versions where we had that in the game, and they started running around on their own, basically doing their own thing. And
even without the art, the first one, they were just gave everyone a mind of their own, and they started just doing stuff.
Yeah, they started doing their thing, walking around, finding their own path, and interacting with each other. Yeah.
And could you like control them or influence them at that point, or was it like, no, this is just a test to see what they end up doing?
Well, there was way less stuff in the game, so even now you only control them by basically assigning them to buildings.
Exactly.
Or doing like these bigger macro things that kind of influence them in their behavior, but you're not controlling them directly, and that's still the case. So so here we had way less buildings in the game, so you had way less tools to actually influence them. So they really just walked around wherever they wanted.
Yeah. I think like the green spots, they are buildings, and the red spots are buildings. And then some of them, they decide to explore the area. And that was like one of the first times that this actually was in the game. And it was kind of a magical moment to see the ant colony start.
You're like, we're onto something here. This is gonna be like, you saw like what the game was gonna look like at that moment, probably.
Kind of. And we programmed behavior then, and there was like autonomous behavior within the agents, and that was really cool to see. And
amazing. And then what were the most interesting things you maybe learned from that initial demo that helped you move forward? And
the first thing was that it works, so we had that really vague idea, or not vague, but far out idea of building these guys that are driven by their behaviors and their psychology, and that they interact with each other, and that's actually all tracked in the game and has an impact on the macro dynamics of the game and the macroeconomy of the game. And like if you it sounds great, but the proof is in the pudding, and so actually seeing it work for the first time was a great confirmation. But then one of the other things, and I guess we are touching on this a little bit later also, is that we realized that the 2D, so originally we set out to do a 2D game, so we created 2D assets and we had a 2D scene, but that actually caused a bunch of problems for us. So at some point we decided to switch into 3D, which made our life a lot easier in many aspects, counterintuitively actually. But and I think the last of these 3 videos there that we saw, or the third of one, you can already see the lights in it that give a lot of depth to the entire scene and make it a little bit more lively and vivid. That's 3D lights already, so that's already when we started, or when we had transitioned the project into to a 3D project from a 2D project.
I think it's super interesting that like from even the first prototype, you could tell that 2D wasn't going to cut it. Even before you put in all the arts, what was it about the first prototype that told you that allowed you to realize that?
It was just the amount of conversations we had about it. So we knew we wanted shadow because basically a lot of the game is the struggle between light and darkness. So we knew shadow would be a pretty important element, and darkness in general also. So we kind of in 2D had to fake the light to some extent. So we were drawing these circles on the ground, that were basically the 2D light assets. And then if we wanted to make a proper shadow, because the way, the perspective worked, it's not a side scroller, you're looking at the game from an angle. We had to do a lot of, brainy work basically to figure out the shadows. At least we couldn't get it to work that easy. And then once we plugged in the whole thing into 3D, it all of a sudden became much easier, because in 3D, everything works like in the real world. And in 2D, it doesn't. We are not living in a 2D world, so it became a lot more intuitive and just easier for us to handle.
Yes, and we'll actually get to see all of that soon, actually. So
Yes.
It'll all be demonstrated. So okay, cool. So I think one of the first things that I kept teasing, and like I'm actually really excited to see, is the UI, like your use of or your experience with UI Toolkit. So I think we have some slides that you're going to share with us, Georg.
Yeah.
We can pull those up. When you
Yeah, cool.
tell us about that experience.
The story how we got to try UI Toolkit, it's actually an interesting one. So as you've seen in this first prototype with the yellow hexes there, we were still using the old UGUI system. But yeah, I remember it very clearly, like one day Simon coming to the office and telling me, oh yeah, I saw this video from the Unite in Copenhagen, and this guy was presenting this new UI system for Unity, and yeah, we should have a look at that. And then we looked at it and was like, yeah, should we start a new project with like the old system? Shouldn't we use the new system? And yeah, we read a bunch of things about it. It was like, yeah, not everything is there yet. Maybe you should not use that for runtime yet. But we thought, yeah, okay, the release is so far out, or like at least a year from now, so it's gonna be all right. So yeah, we just dared and tried it and stayed with it basically. So yeah, we made a lot of UI with UI Toolkit, and yeah, I want to go through what we learned there, what we found works good, what didn't work for us, and yeah, just to show you guys that.
And it's always a challenge, right? When you start with something that's still in production and you're kind of growing with the tool, basically.
Yeah. So there are some stuff that weren't there in the beginning. So for example, there was no runtime binding when we started it, so we had to work our way around that. There was no shader support at the time. There's still no shader support, so that was a thing that actually back then we didn't really know, or it's like that we wanted that at some point. But there weren't any animations when we started. There was no world UI. But then we saw the upsides of it, so it's really easy to use. I personally also have some web background, so the whole flex layout that UI Toolkit uses made it really easy to use for us. And also our artist Norbert, he has a background in web development, so basically in the beginning what we did, he put together stuff in the UI builder, and then I hooked it up with code, and that's how we created most of the UI in the beginning. And then at some point we wanted to do more in the UI, like more sophisticated stuff. For example, in some UI elements, I'll show that later, you can see people in there, like actual people rendered there. So there we use this render texture trick. And all in all, it really fit our architecture. So to go a bit through the weaknesses that we saw. So at that time there wasn't any runtime binding. So in the current version there is a runtime binding, but I actually just saw a couple of things about it. So I cannot really tell much about it. But when we started, it wasn't there, so we had to come up with something else. So what we did is we wrote our own binding library based on the model view model pattern. And also we use UniRX. That kind of helped us. So to everyone who isn't familiar with UniRX, so UniRX is basically, or it's a reactive programming paradigm, and on their website they say the observer pattern done right, but what does it really mean? So you can think of, you have C# events that emit some stuff, so something changes, and then that says notifies something, okay, here's a change, but then this library easily lets you then combine changes and transform changes. So sometimes you want to get an ID, you want to localize that, you want to map that, or you want to buffer stuff like, oh yeah, I want to listen to this changes, but I want to wait for a couple of frames and then collect all that and then do something in the UI. So stuff like that is really easy to do with UniRX. And then with the architecture that we use, like with the model view model pattern, that really helped us. So go a bit into detail here.
Yeah.
So how this thing works is then you have the model, which is here in the bottom center. That is, in our case, or in this example here, it's a building upgrade. So there's some class that is a building upgrade. It has a lot of information on it, like the name, it has its costs, it knows whether it can be unlocked or not. It has all these properties. And then on top of that, you have the view model that knows, that has a reference to this model. And then it actually responsible for example, localizing the ID. So we have this building upgrade here. And that view model then localizes that ID into a proper string. And also localizes, for example, the tooltip on it and all that stuff. So that sits on top of the model. And then on the other hand, you have the view, which is just a wrapper around your UXML basically. So your UI toolkit element that has a bunch of elements. And then the view just references these elements. And in the end, the view binds this view model and updates itself according to changes in the model. So on the right, you have these different states of the building upgrade. So initially, this upgrade you cannot unlock, so it's grayed out. So that's one state. And then once you get the actual resources, it becomes colorful. Then you unlock it, and then the third state is then, oh, you have unlocked it. You get this green check mark, and then the costs disappear from the tooltip.
See, and for anyone who hasn't checked out the game yet in depth, like the game is very UI heavy. Like there's a lot of UI on screen at all times. So having something that you were very comfortable with and like comfortable with manipulating from the get-go was of course very important, right? And like you said, different states, there's times where you don't have enough resources for something, or you haven't hit the upgrade level, or you do upgrade it and now the description needs to change. So all of this stuff is extremely important for this game in particular.
Yeah, we have a lot of state changes, and the UI needs to react to these state changes. So this view can change for a couple of reasons. So you might have enough resources, but the tier isn't unlocked that is assigned to this building upgrade, so you cannot unlock. But so that many different ways, many things can happen, so that would trigger a UI update. Right. And with this architecture, it solved the whole UI problem. It's nothing that we bang our heads against usually. It's like, UI, it's still a lot of work, but still all the complexity is kind of solved with this.
Amazing.
And then there's still no shader support. So what we wanted to do often is like to have like some animations there, so that this flame moves a bit, or this button has this shiny glow that pulsates maybe. And in order to solve that, we went ahead and just built these flipbook animations. And we don't have many in the game because they're it's some work to make them and integrate them into the game. But in some places we have them, and that actually makes certain things pop out. So this button in the bottom here that has this shiny glow, so I will show it later. So it rotates, actually the background rotates, and it really makes you feel like, oh yeah, this is a cool thing, you want to click this.
We actually have some questions from the chat. So
cool.
CC Omer asks, when I change something in this new UI system, does it draw everything over again, or only the part that it's changed? Only the part that has updated? Because I think with the old canvas, if one thing on the canvas changes, everything needs to refresh, right? How does that experience with the UI toolkit when one part of the UI needs to change?
That's actually a good question. So I think that it still draws then everything, but I'm not 100% sure. So we didn't have any performance issues with the UI so far. So
Okay,
that
great.
wasn't our greatest focus to optimize that. So guess I'm the wrong person to answer that question.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, it's good to hear that there were no performance issues regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah. And things are changing all the time. So, like, it's constantly being updated. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when we started, there were no animations basically available. But then I think it was in Unity 2022 or so, they introduced transitions. So it's basically transitions as in the web browser. So you say, okay, I want to change on hover. I want to make the button a bit bigger, and that should happen in 100 milliseconds or so. That is really easy to do. So yeah, we have a lot of these hover effects and click effects that are really you can do them really fast, and they are all in the USS. So that's the styling part of UI Toolkit. So you don't need to touch the UI itself, but just the way you style it. You just say, oh yeah, but on hover, I want to make this button bigger or smaller, or make the opacity, increase the opacity, decrease it, or whatnot. And yeah, so that was something, we didn't have in the beginning. Unity gave that for free with an update. So yeah, and now we're heavily using that.
Oh, okay. So at the start, it was simple. It was like you hover over something and it jumps from like 100 to 50% opacity, for example.
Yes.
It's just a jump. But now you have the transitions. Have you been revamping with the new tools?
Yeah, we went through a lot of the UI to do that, and it's still not 100%, but yeah, we're working on that too. Yeah, it makes it much nicer when you open the UI and it fades in. It's much nicer when it's suddenly there. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We also did something I think that you would rather do in timeline. So some choreography animations I will also show in a second. So one UI screen, when you open it, like first the title fades in, and then the description and the stuff on the right. We also did that with USS transitions. That was a bit more complex. It can be, especially when the UI has many states, it's a bit hard to get right. But I think it's worth it sometimes, but probably not all the time, because it also needs to be spot on, and it's not an easy thing to do. But I can show what we've achieved so far later.
Let's see.
Okay, so let me quickly run the game.
I love the, I don't know if it's a purple moon or a purple sun or...
It's an eclipse.
Oh, it's the eclipse. That's right. Yeah.
So just to give you, like, here, probably you can see it. So when you hover it, like the size of the button increases, the font, the color. So this is like smooth. I hope it can be seen over the stream. So to show you something, so a system that we have is called a journey system. So there you send out people that go on a journey, that explore other sectors. So this is how you start a journey. Usually you can you place it much later in the game, but I have some cheats so that I can place it right away. This is kind of nice. So when you open this, okay, probably I should do it again. So I will click this button in a second, and then you will see how stuff fades in one after the other. So there's like first the title and then this. So this is something that we used. There's also another UI.
That's the choreography, right? Like the order of things that you...
That's a choreography.
Yeah. Very nice.
And then also when you click here on the act, we did it here as well. So first the background and then the actual content there.
Yeah, I like that. It kind of sets the pace and eases people into the information.
Yeah. So that's that. Can we go back to the slides? Then
Let's run through them again real quick. There we go.
Yeah. then there was this issue that there's no world UI basically, but our game doesn't have so much world UI, so I can quickly show you what we did there. So on the left, we just that is something that is I can't really show because that's currently in development. So it will be probably some next releases. So when somebody delivers something at the stockpile, then you have these numbers go up. So in this case, we just resorted to UGUI and call it a day, and it was fine for us to do that. And then on the right-hand side, you have these behavior icons. So there's icons that are shown that tell you what people actually do or what they want to do and can't do. And there's no text in there, so these are just sprites. So that was the way to go. So we sparsely use World UI, so that wasn't really an issue for us that there was no World UI support in UI Toolkit. I think
you didn't have to revert the whole system. You just use both systems. You didn't have to revert the whole system. You just use both systems together.
Yes, you can use both systems together, and that works just fine. Of course, some stuff is a bit different, but for example, these icons here for the wood, these are actual emoticons, so that you just then have that is all text, and it makes it really easy. So you just, and that works in both systems. So you have these text like with sprite, and then you have some ID, and this is like resources -wood or so, and then it just displays this, and then it's all just text, and you don't have to craft you don't have like an image and text and whatnot. It's just all text, and that makes it really easy.
Yeah, it's quite smart actually.
Okay, wait, somehow
did it go backwards, or was that the last slide, or were there more?
No. Oh, I think there's something.
Oh, are we missing a slide?
Yeah, I think we are missing something. Yeah, okay.
We're looking into it. We'll see if there is the last slide. Let's look and see if there are some questions from the audience in the meantime.
Yeah, maybe we can build it up.
Another question, with UniRX, is it possible to use the job system to call lots of events concurrently? I'm not sure if you're using the job system.
We don't use the job system. I mean, as far as I understand the job system, what you need there is like mutable data, and it's rather basic. So I don't think you can do any UniRX stuff on these job threads. I don't think so. I mean, probably you can do some things like you run some code on jobs, and then once that comes back, you wrap that with UniRX, and then get you get an event when all stuff comes back to you. That's probably possible. Yeah. Okay, let me quickly just check the.
I see it here on my end where the slide was how easy it is to use, but I think we're going to pull...
that should be the next one, yeah.
The ease of use, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse us for the small technical difficulty.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, actually, if you just...
go to your screen.
Go to my screen, and then I can
look at your screen.
I can continue there. I have this slides here, and then.
Oh, perfect.
Or I mean, yeah, I can actually.
Open them. That works. Yeah, you open them as images. We see it on the screen now. Oh, we got them. They're
we got them. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So another plus for UI Toolkit is the UI builder. I mean, I hear a lot of people complaining about it, and for us it kind of worked because we we don't use it as, or like to its full extent. So what we usually do is like, in the end, it's all just XML and some USS. It's pretty standard with good IDE. You have autocomplete and everything. So we usually resort to use a text editor, writing that stuff, and then we just use the UI builder to show us the results. But then on the plus side, what is there, I mean, it makes everything explorable. So you know, okay, these properties exist on labels, these properties exist on visual elements. You can try out, oh yeah, what layout options do I have? And yeah, I want to stretch stuff or center it or whatnot. So that's really cool. But we don't use it to actually create UI. We just use it to look at our UI that we created with a text editor. Yeah, so that is our current usage of the UI builder. Okay. And then I think that the web tag is really cool to use. It makes it easy to reason about, and yeah, the IDEs support auto-completion for everything, and yeah, that is really nice to have. Yeah, and then last point is that, yeah, for us, like our artists and developers, we all work on UI. It's all text-based, so there are hardly any merge conflicts. Yeah, that really works well for us. So for our workflows, usually our artist then looks over UI that I made or Alexander made, and then tweaks stuff here and there, and until it's perfect. Or yeah, yeah. So that's in our opinion, yeah, a big plus on the.
Could you dive into that more? Actually, like the developers and artists working together, like what that workflow really looks like?
It depends. So, I mean, usually I create the structure in UXML because it's dictated by the game logic. So, for example, I have this building upgrade, and then I wanna, yeah, I know I need this structure, I need to change this, I need to change that. So I already create some USS classes for different states and hook it up to the different elements. Say, okay, now when it's locked, then I want this black and white image. If it's unlocked, I want this colorful image, something like that. So I usually do that, but they do like a rough thing, and then he goes over and says, okay, yeah, but here we need more space, or this font needs to be bigger, or here we need a bigger font size and stuff like that, and he gets the last 20% out of this. So
well, and that's the art into it as well, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, and then as I said before, so one cool trick that you can use is always you resort to render textures to do more sophisticated stuff. So if we could just quickly go to my screen, then I can show you what I mean. So basically here we go back to the journey window. I haven't done that before when I showed it you previously. So just to not spoil it. So when you select people here, of course, what you would expect here, that on the plus here you see the portrait, but then you actually see the guy standing there and he's animated, and then there's another one there, and there's one here, and these are the actual characters in the game, or like a copy of it, so to speak. So
they're actually UI. They're projected onto UI or something here.
Yeah, the way this works is that I can show you. So basically here, so this thing, let me just quickly move it. So basically you have a camera here, and you have these three people here standing here, and then the camera actually films these three people. It doesn't film anything else, just these three people. We have these particle systems in between that create some fog, and then all of that is actually rendered into a render texture that you see here on the left. So this is the view of the camera. So I can actually go ahead and say, okay, this one guy, I want to move a bit to the left also, and then now he's more, I think I moved to the right. Yeah. And then this is how it looks in the game. So here we have this render texture that films actual scene in the game, or that is from a camera in the game, and that is then used in the UI to show these people. And that way, if I unpause it as well, we can use animations, so I could even make them dance or whatnot, but currently it's just a standing animation, so they have the slide animation, and yeah. But this is how it's done, and how you can actually do fancy stuff with UI Toolkit. And I don't think like something like this in UGUI you would also use a render texture. I don't think that UGUI would support something like this. Yeah.
So yeah, and especially while there were no animations, this was a nice way, like a nice workaround for that.
Yeah, and we can reuse animations, so that is really cool. It's and once you actually change the how people look, so you can actually make them look differently in the game. So you can give them insane eyes, for example, then they look different now.
Oh, nice. This is more said. This is when you choose hard mode, you know, like you change the eye color to red.
So basically all the augmentation that we do throughout the game, that we only need to build it once, and we build it for all our characters, and then we have the system where we just create them behind the scenes, we render to the render texture, and then it's shown in the UI. And that's really cool. That makes it really flexible. So if we introduce new hairstyles or so, there's nothing we need to do for the UI, because this just uses the actual
it's a direct pipeline. It's like not like you're not copying it, reapplying it.
No,
it's just straight from this to that. Yeah, that's great.
The only thing that I have to only caveat is that like these portraits, they are done like it's like a fiddly job to move this all around, because this is actual UI, because like you can have the like a list of all the tribe members, and yeah, this is not render texture, this is actual UI.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so, and that brings us to my last slide of this part.
Would you use it again? Would you use it again?
Would I use it again? I would say yes. I mean, it gave us a lot. I think, I mean, I always have to say for our game, it worked. I don't know, if you have a first-person shooter with lots of world UI, maybe not, I don't know, but for us, it actually worked, and the workflow was good for us, and we had fun while working on UI. And yeah, I'm always on the UI Toolkit forum and reading stuff there, because I'm interested in, wow, what is new there? What do people make out of it?
That's really cool. Just fascinated with the progress. Yeah. And I know the team here in like Montreal are like super hard at work on it, always trying to come out with updates, and so I think it's only gonna get better from here.
Yeah, I believe so too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so we got to look at the characters while you were going through that demonstration, which was a great. Thank you for putting that all together, by the way. And you mentioned the characters dancing and all this stuff, and that's all done with 2D animations, right? And
yes, that's true. That's
bunch of 2D animations in the game, which you're going to tell us a little bit about.
Sure. So as you've seen, we have these characters in the game, and what we use there is to make them walk and sometimes also dance. Is 2D animation. But before I go into that, so what we also do, and is kind of necessary for us, is that, or what is really handy, is that you can actually easily exchange sprites. So for example, let me get the right hand equipment. So people can have an axe, and you can easily change it to the pickaxe or the spear or this thing, the sickle. And that's one way to, or that's super cool to change stuff like equipment. But you can also go ahead and change like the body. So we can, this is a male guy, so we can just say, okay, let's use female O2 or so, and then we just need to quickly go through it.
This is all the built-in tools, right? These are all like...
Yeah, this is all built in. This is like sprite resolver, sprite library. We'll quickly show the sprite library in a second. So then we can change the hair. So we can use like this hair. we changed the head. So just give me a second, and then shoulder quick we don't have. Then we go ahead and this thing. Probably we should give her some different clothes. Sorry for that. Yeah, and now we have
completely different character.
We have a completely different.
But same
character.
rig, right?
It's the same rig, yeah, and that now brings us to the cool part of it. So all these animations, they just work with the same rig, and we don't need to redo them. And yeah, I mean, initially our art budget was super slim, and we kind of needed that, so that we make the characters, we make the animations, but if we add more variations, we cannot do more. We cannot redo all the animations. That was always crucial to us, that we can reuse our animations. Yeah.
And can you tell us a bit more about like how you did the animations?
Yeah,
that is in Unity, like moving the arms around.
Done in Unity, but I haven't done that. So Simon has done a bunch.
Yeah, I mean, if you, in the sprite editor, you can assign the weights to the sprites actually. If you
I can show that in a second.
Yeah, and you guys mentioned that you're just a team of 6, so it totally makes sense to be thinking about this first before going into it. Like, I like that this is what knowing that in advance and having experience kind of defined what the animation style will be. And I think that's a key part of the games that actually make it and that are successful, is they're very realistic with their scope at the beginning.
Yeah,
I think it comes from experience.
Yeah. I mean, we knew our limitations here, and we discovered this is a possibility. So yeah, we went for it, and we didn't regret it at all, because now we can add all sorts of new characters to the game, like even like really out there types of monsters, and they basically work with all the animations out of the box more or less.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, here in the skinning editor, if you can put it if you want back again so that they are all on top of each other. Yeah. Here in the sprite editor, you can create these rigs. So this is just a basic rig that I created really quickly. Nice. If you know how that works, it's done in like 5 minutes. And then if you select the weight stuff, some of the weight things on the left, you can see how. So I mean, just for explanation here, you can see like literally all the assets that we have in the game are just layered on top of each other, because of course important that they have the right position in the PSB file that we upload here, to make sure that the locations fit the bones basically. So what you can see here is that the colors of the bones are now visible on these sprites. So this is how the weights are distributed on these different body parts basically. The weights of the bones, that is, so how much a bone impacts the transformation of this particular sprite. And once you've done that, and you go to the animator, so once you assigned basically the sprites to their corresponding bones, you just go to the animator and you animate it. And this is just like, you set the keyframes that you want, store them, and so what the little dots down there are, just the different positions of different parts of different sprites at different points of the animation, and it just circles through that, of course. So basic keyframe animations. And another thing that we used is the limb solver from Unity actually, which was pretty handy, because if you assign like the different pieces of the arms and different pieces of the legs to this limb solver, it automatically makes it so that like the elbows bend in the right direction and stuff like that. So it makes animation much easier. You only move basically the position of the target of what basically the hand is pointing
is
at.
IK? Is this like inverse kinematics, like where you just move the arm and it moves the rest? Or
it's been a while when we did it, but I think so. Yeah,
it should work like that. Actually, you should be able to click this thing, but I'm not the biggest expert in that, so.
And that's how this is done. And just mind you, like I have zero background in animation, so It's really user friendly. Like,
How long did it take you to like figure it all out?
I don't know. I spent a few days maybe reading up and experimenting, but once I had the hang of it, the initial animations were done pretty quickly. Like these animations were actually done by somebody else who helped us out a little while on the project. So, but yeah, I think all the animations originally were done within like, I don't know, maybe a week or two, not
That's
even.
incredible.
And
the whole game's animations in a week. That's amazing.
yeah, and then all the reworked ones and even making additional ones was done in less than 4 weeks for sure. Like it was just a couple of days of work basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really cool. And then layered on top of all of this, when you're actually in the game, these are 2D characters, but you may notice that the shadow, like we mentioned this earlier, the shadows are going in all different directions because you're not using 2D lights. The world, and we saw it when you were looking at the UI, the world is actually 3D, even though the game just at first glance looks like it's 2D. And yeah, can we look at that? Like look at how you implemented the 3D lights, look in the scene view and maybe rotate around a bit and see the reality of everything? Yeah.
Like one tiny thing that I want to show you. So
go ahead.
What's also possible in the game that you get these mushroom monsters basically, and or that everyone turns into a mushroom monster, and when you look at what they do, so yeah, the animation just works and it's still the same animation and they have the axe in their hand and
and you can just like have these crazy cool events that like take the player by surprise with a minimal amount of additional work.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah,
and we didn't go all the way down the rabbit hole yet. Like this is a cosmic horror game, so like we could even use this to make really grotesque beings, like where we just so far we haven't done that, but yeah, maybe we'll get to that at some point.
Not yet.
Yeah, let me just quickly go to the night, then it's easier to see. So yeah, let's go into scene view. So here you have the actual, so this is all 3D basically. So you see that the people, they are actually flat like billboards, and then here you have
there's no 3D asset in the entire game, I think. Not a single one. It's all 2D assets.
Yeah, and then we also added these very simple shadow objects. So
they are 3D, right?
Yeah, they are 3D. Yes, actually,
but they are invisible.
They're invisible. So we have like you see this. Okay, that's probably a bit close. So what we added there is just like this cylinder that is anchored at the trunk of the tree, and that's it. We don't have. I mean, we used to have like this capsule on top of it, but there's actually not needed. So here you can see that. Yeah, this is just a very simple shape, and it adds so much to the game that we have this shadow here. And it was quite easy to use, and also these people, they have like this very simple shape, and as it is with shadows and light. So if there's a light on the left and that casts a shadow on the right, the shadow doesn't need to match like 100% the object. If there is some shadow, that is okay. The brain does the rest actually, and
and I think it suits the art style super well. Yeah. And it's a really good point about the brain filling in the gaps, because especially with the mood and the ambience of this game, everything is kind of dark and moody, and so having these just bulky shadows works super well to add to that darkness. And then your brain is constantly filling in the gaps in this game. Like when you turn off the fire and everything goes dark, you're only hearing the noises and seeing some misty shadows, and you're like, I just imagine wolves. I'm sure somebody else imagines something else, and I guess that really works with the cosmic horror theme, where nothing is quite clear or drawn out for you, right? It's all left to your imagination almost.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
almost indescribable.
Yeah, and it's also as long as you, like, one thing we noticed specifically with the shadows is as long as you keep it consistent in terms of the level of detail that you're using, nobody minds it at all. So we had, like Georg mentioned, more detailed shadows for the trees at some point, and tried different things for the different buildings, with more detail, and that kind of broke everything else. Even though nothing changed, all of a sudden you recognized, oh, this shadow was way more detailed than the other one, and then it didn't feel right anymore. But as long as you keep everything simple, it just works.
Got it. Yeah, like you have it like a super detailed like tree with all the leaves on the edges, and then a more simple character that just maybe feels a bit out of. Okay, that's so you experimented, I guess, with more complex shadows at first. Before
we did at some point, but yeah, we sorted to simple stuff. Or for example, here this lumber, this building here, that is just this box, and that's it. And
true.
Yeah, and then also what makes it sometimes hard is that like everything is dynamic. People can place buildings everywhere that have lights, so you want to keep stuff simple so that it still works. So if it makes it too complex, then stuff might overlap or whatnot. So we accidentally, or there was a choice to keep this part of the game simple.
Great. And you also get I think it helps with clarity as well, to not have too many shapes on screen.
So definitely.
Great choice. Amazing. And then something else you want to touch on, in addition to all of this, was the performance the game, right? We mentioned it a bit. We talked about UI and how it didn't hinder the performance, but
there were other issues.
So let's look into that.
So let me just quickly restart.
This is not something usually like game devs who are just starting out and prototyping think about, which is why it's so interesting to have developers like yourself who are like so far in the process, who have reached like the end part of game, like of building a game where you actually have to confront like all the mistakes you made throughout the project. You have to confront performance, because this is going to be deployed on all types of computers with all different types of specs, right? So you have to face it. It's great to hear from your experience.
So to quickly give you some overview how it's done, I need to turn on the lights so that you can actually see stuff better.
It feels wrong. It feels so wrong.
It feels wrong. I'm sorry. So let me quickly just... So the way our world currently is built, or especially like especially how the ground is set up. So we have these meshes here, so so each tile has basically a different, or each tile type has a different color here. So that's like the base of everything. We have like one mesh for each quadrant. So if you zoom out, you have like these different quadrants, so that culling kicks in. So that is already optimized for that. And then on top, what we did is we used the Unity tile maps, and then we have some. So because you don't want these sharp edges here, so that doesn't look good, of course. What you want is like at the edge we want to overlap with something else. So that's why we put at the edges these tiles that are like sprites basically. And then on top of that there comes the macro tiles that sometimes, like when you have a stone pit, for example, there's like this big macro tile, but there might be in other places. Currently there's none here. So, but other places when there's a lot of space, we have these macro tiles that add some variety to the whole thing. And we actually had some performance issues with this thing, and because we relied on dynamic draw call batching, but what we actually learned then is that, or what we did then is we upgraded to the latest Unity version, to 23.2, and there is the SAP batcher, which is like some batching mechanism. I think, not sure if it's only for URP, but I guess so. That makes draw call batching much cheaper. And before it was only for meshes, but with the newest Unity version, it worked for sprite renderers, it worked for tile maps. And that's why we actually went ahead and upgraded to the latest Unity version. To give you an overview what this whole thing does is, let me quickly, so this is the world as we see it. And let me quickly put on the draw call, the frame debugger. Here you can actually see draw calls. And then let me get to the right thing. So here we actually draw the whole world. So you can step through all the draw calls and see what they do. And here there is one SAP batch. And as I have explained before, so we have these different layers. We have the meshes underneath, then we have the tiles, and then we have the macro tiles. And all of that is now drawn in one draw call, which is super cool. And then like the next one is doing all the trees that are up there. We still have some stuff that relies on dynamic draw call batching. So for the people that doesn't, or for the tribe members that doesn't work yet due to some reasons. Yeah, and then all the decoration elements that we have there, they are all batched with the SAP batcher, which makes stuff a lot faster. So we did that change. We did also a couple of other improvements there, but moving forward to the SAP batcher was a really cool thing to do, and yeah, brought us performance-wise a big step forward. Yeah.
Okay, so that made a huge difference for you. And did you figure out that was the issue just from looking at the draw calls, or using the memory profiler, or what was it that helped you identify the issues?
Yeah, we looked at draw call performance, like spent a lot of time in the frame debugger and saw, okay, when does the dynamic batcher kick in and so on, and when not, and then eventually tried out the latest Unity version. We still need to adjust our shaders. So the way the SAP batcher works is that shaders need to be written in a certain way, but we could actually change our shaders to support the SAP batcher, and then once that was done, yeah, we went ahead with it. And yeah, I mean, there's still buildings aren't SAP batched yet, but we're at the spot where I would say, yeah, stuff is performed enough to keep it as it is. We'll probably do something in the future, but not now.
And did it affect the performance in any other way when you upgraded?
Yeah, there was some issue with the 2D animation actually. So I mean, here in this is a special branch where I still use the 2D animation version 10. We actually downgraded to version 9 because there we didn't see these issues. Yeah, so when there were a lot of people on the scene and this whole sprite deformation that happens, so when somebody bends over, then the sprite needs to be deformed, basically for the tribe members. That actually took a lot of time, and especially when you had a lot of people on the tribe. But yeah, downgrading it to the version 9 of the 2D animation, that actually helped us and solved it. So yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting. You were able to individually downgrade like one package, but
yeah, we kind of had to adjust it a bit. So yeah, it was not the easiest way to do it, but
okay.
we
some smart
eventually made it.
workarounds.
So because there was actually no way. It's
yeah.
If I turn on the profiler, yeah, I could show you what is happening there. And amazing. Yeah.
And what's great is that I think you already reported that issue.
Yeah, we did that.
So that's fantastic. Okay, good. I'm just curious before we go on to other things about, like, one thing that just caught my eye is the shadows on the ground from the clouds. I'm wondering like what you do, like how you're like doing that.
That is actually, so here on the left we have the sun. So, and what you can do I think that was introduced in 2022 or so, you can have these cookies, so light cookies. So basically how it works is that instead of having like a flat or like an equally distributed light source, you can put some sprite in there, and then, for example, you have the Unity logo, and then you would have that Unity logo as a shadow of that light. And I'm not sure. I think it works with most of the light types. So the sun in this case is a directional light, so all the light rays are parallel, so they light up the whole scene. And what we do there is we have this, again, a render texture that here in the bottom you see. I don't think you cannot see it updating, but this is a special shader that we use that keeps on updating that and creates these clouds, and then stuff actually moves and deforms a bit and so on and so forth. So it's
the cookie has a render texture that's animated.
Yes.
Yes.
So
very cool.
So
it's
we
an
can have a
animated
static.
cookie.
We can have a static cookie. So let me just quickly take, I don't know, this thing. Okay. No, sorry, it didn't work. But yeah, you could, in theory, you can have any. You should be able to use anything, and then
Yeah.
Okay.
It's commonly used with like light hitting windows, and you just want to have a window cookie instead of like you doing the actual shadow calculations and all that stuff. It's also nice performance, but it's really well done. It's very nice. And is the sun actually turning and moving and because I know the color changes, but
yeah, there are color changes, but also here on the top you see some rotations going on. So it actually,
that's how you see it moving across the screen,
yeah,
right?
So that's also how it moves. So it then stretches throughout the day. So in the nighttime, as you can see now it stretches around this axis because of the angle. The sun goes down in the west now. Yeah. So on the left side. So that's why it stretches into this direction. And then once at dawn, the sun goes up on the right hand side basically, and then stretches along that axis. So
and is it a seamless tileable texture as well, the cookie? Like is it
yes, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it has to be to. Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
it's cool to see.
As you can see, so here, up here, and down. Yeah, this all it matches. Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah, I haven't done this texture, so I cannot say much about it. But yeah.
Yeah, no, very nicely done. And then it was something else we were going to talk about. It was the unit testing, right? So. Again, we're talking about reaching the end of a game and all the performance you have to do. There's also a lot of bug fixing and bug testing you have to do, especially with a game that's as like heavy and like system heavy as this one, right? There's so many different interlocking systems that I'm sure there were like bugs popping up all over the place. Just the nature of game development, right? But how you tackle those bugs is the important thing, and it looks like you used unit testing.
Yeah. So maybe we can switch to the slides. So in the beginning of the game, I was a bit, I wouldn't say naive, but I kind of thought, yeah, okay, let's just make this thing work. Let's punch out features and yeah, that was especially true during the prototype phase. And yeah, but at some point, like it dawned me, so yeah, okay, but game development it can't be much different than actual software or other software development, not actual other software development. So and then I used to work in also other industries. I worked as a web developer before, and in other companies that are not making games.
Yeah.
So and from there, I kind of learned that okay, yeah, unit testing helps you to keep the bar high, and so that's what I did then at some point, and yeah. Created our architecture and designed okay, this part belongs here, this other part belongs there, and while doing that we wrote a lot of unit tests actually, and yeah, to this day we have like over 1,400 unit tests, over 80 integration tests that help us also when you have multiple components and you want to know that they all work well together, and then you have these integration tests that do integrative stuff. So for example, we have integration tests for all the building tasks. So you have the lumber camp, you assign somebody to it, and then you plant some trees on some artificial map basically, and then you let the simulation run for a while, and then in the end that tree must be gone, there must be wood in the stockpile, and the guy needs to be there, and that's something that we do we can test out in an automated fashion, and that really helps us to reduce the number of bugs.
So you know how when you're building a game mechanic or something, you usually have a gym for that. So do you have a series of test gyms that are like prefab based, so that whenever you're making updates, those gyms always exist and it's running those tests, or are the tests done differently than that?
I mean, most of our tests are not touching a lot of Unity stuff. So it's a test on the simulation itself and
the logic.
And the logic and all the system. So yeah, the event system or the journey system, there are lots of tests there, but also basic stuff like positions. You have like two positions that are 3 hexes apart from it, so the distance needs to be 3. So stuff, very basic stuff as well.
Got it.
Yeah, and it actually helps us when you need to write testable code, and it actually helps us to, or forces us kind of to decouple our components so that they are not so tightly coupled, and then it makes it easier to test it.
Yes, and to test different variations of things.
Yeah, and
Nice.
and we even went ahead and created 2 different assemblies for different stuff. So we have the core assembly, so that contains the simulation basically and all the game logic. There's not much Unity reference in there, so that's in theory. So we still have some like serialized field attribute, of course, is used a lot, like mathf or the color type, but there's like more than 99% of our tests are on this core assembly, and we try to stay as much in C# to model the game logic there. And then we have the game assembly that kind of acts like a view of the game. So because the simulation runs all the time, and then, for example, there's like an agent class for the visual representation of a tribe member. So, and when the simulation says, oh yeah, please run this animation, that class just plugs in or tells the animator, oh yeah, now please run it. And that's it. So we try to keep the assembly, the game layer rather dumb, and that it just moves, or that it just passes information down, and when information comes up, it displays it. But all the game logic, so is somebody allowed to go somewhere, that sits in the core assembly, so in the simulation part, of course.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've already said a couple of stuff here. So yeah, we try to stay as long as possible in pure C#, so that actually makes testing easier. So to isolate the problem to C#, and then once that is done, we build like UI on top of it and in-game stuff, and then that just listens to changes on the simulation. Yeah, as I said, the game layer, it really helps to keep it as dumb as possible. And then actually tests are not so important for that. So actually a friend approached me some time ago, said, yeah, with this unit testing in game. So yeah, we tried it too, but we have like problems with components and game objects and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, but okay, we don't test that actually. So we kind of rely, or we resort to, okay, we mostly test C# code. There's some Unity stuff that we test, but that's really sparsely used. Yeah, and as I said before, there's like integration tests help to ensure that the systems work well together. So there's like these behavior tests that I mentioned with the lumber camp, that works well. There's also save game integrity tests, so that you load a save game, or you play the game, you save it, then you restore the game, and then that should be the same as you would have played without saving and loading. So that makes sure that all the state that in the game happens is actually persisted and restored correctly.
That's actually a really interesting thing to test as well, since like you don't want to be loading a save file and then it didn't track something that you're supposed to track, especially with all the systems that are supposed to be saved at once. So
so
okay.
For example, you forgot that some properties somewhere, like that there are like trees on a tile, so you don't persist it, and then suddenly there wouldn't be any trees when you load the game. So of course there would be issue that
could ruin your run or something.
Yeah, you would easily see, but they're like more subtle stuff, like, oh yeah, there's this counter that keeps track of how often you can press the ritual button or some cooldown, and that is not persisted. So that is stuff that is a bit harder to find. And then what we also recommend doing, also we use NUnit, so that is like a unit testing framework out there. There's also other like XUnit, so there you can use test cases, which is really cool. So that makes it easy to do data-driven unit tests. So here on the right, I copied some screenshot with the test case, and what these are just parameters for a test that partitions something. So the 10 is partitioned into two partitions, and then the partitions need to be 5 and 5. But if you partition 10 into 3 partitions, then of course that doesn't add up. So the partition needs to be 3, 3, and 4. So that way it's really expressive to, or it's much easier to write these tests because you just have this annotation where you define some input parameter and then you have one test that tests all these different cases. Yeah, and then last but not least, so what we also do is we run our tests in the editor, not in the editor, but in Rider, in an IDE. So that also keeps the iteration cycle short, because you don't need to go into Unity and then start that and then run the test. So you can write your code, you keep on running your tests, making sure that they are green, and then once that is stable, you go to Unity and do your stuff there. But usually, I mean, almost all of our tests, like 99% of our tests, run in Rider. There are some, or we have some attribute that we can mark certain tests that, okay, they need to run in Unity because they require some Unity logic that wouldn't be available in your IDE. So yeah, that is something that we learned, and yeah, we're quite happy with that approach.
This is great. People in the chat are loving the, like, there are people who have also done unit testing, and they're so happy to see the other approaches and getting excited about that. It looks like it's a very popular topic. Maybe we need to do a few more videos about that.
So the screenshot in the bottom right where it says standalone and unit launcher, that is something in Rider where you can actually select. So you can select that it runs in Unity, then it starts Unity, or it runs a test in Unity. But that's usually a bit more, it takes a bit longer, and it's much faster to do it in Rider directly. So if you select the NUnit launcher, then you stay in Rider, and yeah, that has some benefits. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. That would be actually it for the for the unit testing. So happy to answer any questions there. But yeah.
Yeah, I think something else. Yeah, something we wanted to talk about was the scriptable objects. We mentioned in the beginning how sometimes you want to get your game designers working in editor without like having to worry about the code. So I think you use scriptable objects to be able to achieve that, like a task kind of system.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So what we have in the game, we have like actually 2 different event systems. So there are regular events that you see that come up from time to time. They actually need code, or some code at least, to make them. But as we have seen before, so there's also the journey system where you can send out people in the Explorer platform, and there you also have events. And the events that are displayed there, they are actually no code events, I would say. So let me just give you an example. So you assemble your journey party, you give them some resources so that they don't starve, you choose some direction where they go, so you start the journey, then your journey begins, you acknowledge that. Now I need a cheat to trigger the next journey event. So what then happens is that now, of course, it's much faster, so usually it takes, I think, a day in the game currently. So and then these people, they experience something in the game. So in this case, they see some kind of light, and you need to make a choice. So you either sleep inside the circle, which gives you a 65% chance that the sleep need is satisfied and the discontent goes down, or 35% chance that the fear goes up. Or you continue onwards, which in this case is like it gives you some malus, but it's not that big. So you either take the risk or you live with the small disadvantage. And then you click it. It tells you what has happened there. So I was lucky. I got these. So discontent went down. The sleep need was also satisfied. And then I choose whether I want to go further or turn back. So this is basically the event system. And then there more and more events come up. So, and since this is a no-code event system, I quickly want to show you how this is all done, and then actually create one for us. So So the way we do it is just you say here TTMS journey, and then you add an event, and then let's call this Unity Creator Spotlight.
Yeah.
So we have this event. So in here, you have to select the ID. So this is the only code part I prepared before. So you just need to add this ID in an enum, but that's it. So it's technically not the no-code event system, but like 99.9%.
Okay. I'll allow
You
it.
select some background. So the journey backgrounds are a bit different. So these are all the backgrounds that are used for other events, but we need to use one of the journey events. So in this case, I really like the standing stones background. We give it some weight, and this time, let's say 10, so that steers how likely it is that this event happens compared to all the other events. But what I will do, I will just disable all the other events, so we will get this event for sure. Yeah, and then we go ahead, and there are different options. So let's say we have a good option. There can be conditions when this option is shown. We don't add a condition. And then there are outcomes. So let's say we get a 9%. So this is the good outcome. So a 9% chance that we get something. So here we can actually select what kind of effect it is. So I would say let's get a journey item. So these are also defined already, but yeah, so we could say, okay, there's a 90% chance that you get this sky disk. And then let's also say, then there is the bad outcome, 10%. Let's say you lose resources and you lose 10 to 20 wood. Yeah, so that gives you one option. So this is like, we should actually call this option 1. And then let's add another option. So this one is like you actually dare to do something, and then we say option 2. And for option 2, there's like the default option. You would just lose a bit of resources to make it consistent with the rest. I would say let's make it less. Let's say, okay, you lose 5 wood.
Okay.
So what we have here now is an event. You have 2 options. One has like a 90% chance to get a cool item, a 10% chance that you lose some amount of wood. And option 2 is, hey, you lose some wood. So then let's just...
Can you like also add like make everybody mushroom? For example,
No, that's actually
turn
not
everyone
possible,
into mushrooms.
But I mean, what you can do is, what we can do is to the bad option, we can say that you could say somebody dies. So
Yeah,
that's
okay.
also pretty serious.
So you predefine the things that can happen, and then the game
Yes.
or system designer can go in and tweak the values. But if you
Yes.
wanted to add something like if you fail this outcome, everyone turns into like mushroom people, the coder would have to create that like block
Yes.
essentially, and
Of course.
you can play with that. Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So these green options we have, those are programmed once, but then
Yeah.
they can be used in all the events basically.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. So let's just...
Yeah, and in practice, it also means that the content designer can start implementing this before code is done with everything. So we can just add in certain perks or whatever items that you get there, or things that can happen in there, while in parallel, basically.
You're adding more content, and then you can evolve some of those events later. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah.
So were you using this a lot, Simon?
I haven't been using that in a while. No, Nico, our content designer, is the one,
The content
the one, the power user of this functionality.
How are you? Okay,
Yeah.
okay. How many
Yeah.
events are there? Like, do you think in the game? Like, how much is this being utilized?
I haven't. So, I mean, journey events are a little bit different from the other events that pop up in the regular gameplay.
Yes.
But I don't know the exact number from the top of my head right now, but I think we are. Well, it must be over I want to say 40 or 50 journey events at the moment. Something
Right.
Something
So it
in
makes
that
a lot of
ballpark.
sense to have a tool for something that's used that much, you know? Because
Yes,
I
yes,
always find it
absolutely.
fascinating of like when do you build something just like, you know, ask the coder to implement something, or when you ask the developer on the team to actually build a tool to then utilize it. But for something that's going to be used to that extent, it's like well justified to take the
And we
time
want
to make this.
Yeah, and we want to keep using it. So this is like the cool
Right.
kind of content that we can then create basically with, you know, every bigger patch we can, if we want
Yeah.
to, or have to focus for it, you know, ship a couple of additional events to keep the game fresh.
Exactly. Yeah. That's great.
So yeah, I've already started our Explorer party. So let's
Nice.
trigger the next event. And
Oh, it's the
yeah,
Creator
as you can
Spotlight
see,
event.
Loka is still missing, but we have our event here. We have some text and we'll quickly touch the Loka. So in a second. So here we have this 90% chance to gain the sky disc. We have 10% chance to loot 13 wood and somebody dies. Yeah, and here we lose just 5 wood. So I would say let's press option 1. And yeah, we got the sky disc. Cool. And then we take it, we get rid of this wood, and that's it. So now we have an event. And then also down here, as you see, it warns me that missing Loka keys. So actually what I want to do is just quickly go to the Loka here. So we have this the system of Loka keys that warns you when stuff isn't localized. So we can actually do that and just go here. So this is basically the default Unity localization system. So we call it Unity Creator Spotlight. Then we have a description here. Let's say something spooky is about to happen. Do you dare? So as you can see, I'm not the writer on this project.
I love it.
Yeah, and then let's say here, this was the option 1. Yes, let's say there, or let's say let's do it. And then let's say
Let's go home.
like, and then there is this one. I think, wait. So now there's the description of the good outcome. Yes, we got it. I think I clicked on the wrong. So and then there's this one.
I think we also don't need them all. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
People will get the idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
It's cool to see though, like how many options you can add and how, like, does the writer work directly in Unity like that, or do the writers work in documents outside and then it's brought in, or they work?
Yeah, we go through a few stages. Like we do some structural design and some writing pass, but yeah, then usually it's cut short quite quickly, and we quite quickly go into Unity. So
okay, the writer themselves is comfortable using Unity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, nice. That's great.
So now we have this event, and let's just make it.
Yeah.
That's
I would still say, let's do it.
Yeah, that's it. I don't feel like it.
Yes, we got it.
Oh.
Yeah, and
that was very easy.
That's it, and
it's great, and it really empowers the designers to like, and the writers to not have to like. It's difficult when you feel you always have to bug somebody else to get your own work done. So to enable
Yeah.
them is fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, that's great to see. Was that everything for the scriptable object?
Yeah, that was actually. Oh, maybe one thing I should mention. So this green drop down, there's actually a plugin or like open source thing that is called serialized reference property drawer. I think it can be found on GitHub. That is really handy. So what we do here is we basically serialize polymorphic data. So we have this list of effects, and each effect is kind of different. And then you have these drop downs. You need some annotations in code or some attributes that says, okay, these are the different implementations. And then you get this green drop down where you can actually change easily the type of effect that you have or that you want to have. Yeah, that was really handy. It's a really small addition to Unity, but that made our lives much easier.
Super cool. Was that from the assets or you said GitHub, right?
It's on GitHub. I can quickly find it and then.
Sure. So, guys, thank you so much for all of this, for the showcase, giving us a glimpse at your UI Toolkit experience, your brave experience starting early before it was at 1.0 and ready to go. We usually like to wrap up these shows with final takeaways, advice you have from your long journey of developing this game. So I'll do one for each of you. I'll start with you, Georg. Maybe you can tell us, what is one takeaway you have for somebody else who's looking to start their indie journeys, to build their game, to maybe start a studio the way you did with Simon. If you have something for the people watching.
Yeah, it's a long journey, but it's rewarding, I would say, and often you don't know what will come for you, but in the end it's worth it, and we just don't go away. That's our motto. We just keep doing that, and yeah, that's the spirit, basically.
I love that. So no matter what difficulties you face or whatever you're confronting, you just keep going. It doesn't matter. Just
exactly.
Very nice. And Simon?
Yeah. I wanted to say the same thing. Maybe I expand a little bit on it. Like I think every project, is very bright and interesting in the beginning, and every project, gets pretty bright and interesting in the end. But there's usually this dark part in the middle where you feel kind of lost, and you're the end is really far away, but you've also spent too much time to really give up on it. And I can just encourage everybody, don't go away, keep doing it, and you will probably get to the end. I think everybody is dealing with this exact problem, and I hope that's good to know for the people out there.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Guys, thanks for sharing everything you shared today. This was wonderful, and thank you to the audience who joined us in the chat, both on Twitch and on YouTube. Remember to follow us on Twitch, subscribe on YouTube, and most importantly, remember to check out the game. We've been dropping links in the chat, but again, we're gonna drop one more time the link to the Steam page and to the website in the chat. So check out the game, definitely. And guys, this was a pleasure.
Yeah, our pleasure. Thanks for having us and listening to us talk about our game.
I could do it for hours, guys. I could do it for hours.
We could too.
So then we'll do it again, hopefully, in the future. All right. Well, this was great. See you. Ciao, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.